you're done with it, you don't have to. It's totally up to you. Someone come by. About foreign inside. Really no other way to do it. Thanks again for letting me see it.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Okay? So I'm going to say thanks. Thanks. Camera. Little phone. One over there. Okay? Alright. Okay. If you have any trouble or anything goes on, just let me know and I can step up. If you want to walk with us, okay. All there. That's a little bit. Oh, I was in Chicago. 6 years. Looking at Greenwich. You want to know the guy? Shamayim va'aretz ha'iten lamod raglecha hayanum shomrecha hine lo yanum ve'lo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomrecha Adonai Tzilcha Ayad Yeminecha Adonai Shomrecha Adonai Tzilcha Ayad Yeminecha Yomam HaShemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikora ישמור ישמור את נפשך אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם על מקומו יבוא ושלום. We begin with the chanting of a psalm, Psalm 121, Shir Lama'alat, a song for ascending. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection, your guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming, now and forever. May Larry Winestock go to God in peace. Hatzur tamim paulo kichol rachav mishpat el emunah ve'inav el tzadik v'yashar hu tzadik atah Adonai lamidu lahachayot asher biyadcha bigadon kol ruchot chalil lecha zichronenu limchot v'yihiyu na'ineicha b'rachamim aleinu v'kuchot ki lecha Adonai rachamim v'haslichot Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית והרבה להשיב אפו ולא ירקוך חמתו וישוב העפר על הארץ שהיה והרוח תשוב אל האלוהים אשר נתנה. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God send comfort to those who mourn and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. Thank you everyone for coming and joining us here at the Shared Zedek Cemetery. Thank you to those of you who cannot be here with us in person but have joined us by tuning into the broadcast, the live stream of this service. Near and far, we have gathered here today to honor Larry Winestock, as he was known by his Hebrew name, Lazer ben Menachem Mendel Verochel, the son of Ray and Max Winestock, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory, husband of Barb, father of Gabriel and Bailey, father-in-law of Kylie and Noah, Zeta to Layla, friend to many. Special mention the family wanted his godson, Dave, whose own father of blessed memory was Larry's best friend, passed over 20 years ago. Our Larry passed away Tuesday, the first day in the Hebrew month of Cheshvan. He was 76. Many people here today, I'm sure, are still reeling because Larry's passing was a shock. Even though he has dealt throughout his life, and even very recently, with serious health issues. Worth mentioning some even in this last calendar year that landed him back in the hospital for a serious stint. Still, no one was prepared for the news that came just a few nights ago that Larry had left us so suddenly. This moment is tragic. His family has been rocked. I want to thank everyone again for joining your hearts together with theirs, with Larry's loved ones, to bring them comfort and strength at what is certainly the lowest point in their family, and maybe even in their lives. So thank you. These kinds of moments force us to realize something we don't often acknowledge, though we know to be true. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who have ever lived, with all who will ever live. Still, when it happens and it catches us by surprise, we confront this knowledge that we often try to keep safe by not thinking of. It reminds us how truly precious life is. One of the things we say in Jewish tradition at these services comes from the book of Job, and you'll hear it again before we conclude. It's a nod to the epitome of suffering in Jewish tradition. That's what Job was. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken, blessed be the name of God. We never know when our opportunities to be together, to live together, to love together are going to run out. We try to make the most of all of them, because just like that, it can change. As for us, it has. In a few moments, Gabriel, Larry's son, is going to get to come up here and offer a eulogy, a letter he has written. But the family and I met the other night, and I have the honor of offering an introduction, words of tribute, to help round out our service as we honor Larry, as we pay tribute to him, and we do the thing that our tradition calls the highest form of respect, accompanying him here to his final resting place. I personally only met Larry Winestock a handful of times. But the truth is, that's one of the best ways to meet and to know Larry Winestock. Because we're talking about someone here who made a fantastic first impression. Even if your experiences like mine were only a few, they were memorable, they stood out, and they made those interactions feel so much more worthwhile than they could have felt with others. That's because Larry was friendly and easy to talk to, outgoing and loud and funny, not afraid to talk to anyone new. Throughout his life, people were drawn to him. He was personable, likable. He made fast friends. Sometimes those friendships turned into lifelong friendships, as Larry was excellent at staying in touch, remaining loyal, a steadfast friend. In fact, it was not uncommon for Barb and Larry to meet new people, become friends very quickly, and travel with them. It's not surprising they have a large circle of close friends, many of whom are here today, offering their support and love. Part of what made Larry so interesting was that he had stories, he had experiences. Perhaps he could talk about his days curling, playing bridge, maybe some of the things he collected, or better put, gathered, like reminiscence, paraphernalia of the original incarnation of the Winnipeg Jets, hurricane lanterns, coins, and not like one of those proper coin collections, just bags of coins all over the place. This is what happens when you find a lot of your collectibles at garage sales. One of Larry's passions he shared with Barb, weekend mornings spent looking for garage sales, because it was the hunt that really excited Larry. Less about the stuff, more about the hunt. Or perhaps he'd talk about his love of pickles. Maybe he'd drop a pun that would make you wish that you were talking to somebody else. And then he'd drop another one. Maybe you got to hear him talk or even go for a ride in his car. His 1969 red Mercury Meteor, a Ford. A car from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Not his car, but it looked like the car. One of his passions, one of his true hobbies and interests. But Larry was a complicated guy. He wasn't your typical anything. He wasn't your typical car collector. When the handle of this vintage automobile, the window handle, broke off, he replaced it with one that he got probably at a garage sale from a Toyota Corolla. That was Larry. Still looking cool because no one's going to see the handle. He was easy to talk to because he was cheerful, joyful, and a delight to be around. He was fun. You could have fun with him. Just ask the Friday night group that Barb and Larry kind of invited themselves into, a group of couples, half a dozen, 7, 8 couples, many of them much younger than Barb and Larry, who they met over 15 years ago and started visiting every single Friday night, even taking trips. Great parties, great fun. That's what Barb remembers, if you ask her, when she talks about meeting Larry for the first time. They were set up on a blind date. In fact, just the day after Larry passed was their 42nd wedding anniversary. They were married within the first year they met. They were living together within 2 days of when they met. I know, you can ask her. But before they went on their blind date, he called her on the phone. She thought he was somebody else and started talking all about this blind date that she was getting ready for. When she figured out who he was, the conversation didn't end, it continued for 3 hours. It was fun from the very beginning for Barb Block and for Larry Winestock. Like we said, just 2 days after their first date, they were living together. Everything worked. Even their bickering, Barb says, worked. Together, not only did they enjoy their shared love of garage sales, they took many trips, some memorable trips all over the world. An especially memorable trip to Spain, a number of cruises, one they got to share with their kids. And then, of course, this other trip that I don't quite understand, you can ask Barb, a trip called the M trip, where they went to visit all these places on the map that start with M. So we started listing some of the other, no, they didn't get to every place that starts with M, but they went to Milwaukee and they went to Michigan. You get the idea. Probably the favorite thing that Barb and Larry enjoyed doing together was partying. I'm going to use a quote from their kids from when we met the other night. Heavy partying. They would get together, usually with groups of their friends. They would go out till all hours, dancing, socializing. They would drink. Barb would drink cocktails. Larry would drink Diet Pepsi. And then sometimes their kids would see them out at places like the King's Head, and then their kids would go home after a night on the weekend of them going out and their parents still wouldn't be home yet. They knew how to have fun. Whether it was chasing live music or just a good time, it was something Barb and Larry did together for 42 years. I kind of want to wait. To shift the tone a moment. Speaking of Larry and Barb together, they met when they were a little bit older in their lives, already established. For Larry, he was already well into his career, a 40-year career, we should mention, working for the Manitoba government in social services. Some of the stories that you may have been able to share with Larry were about the times, especially early in his career, when he traveled north to many of the reserves in northern Manitoba and other northern communities, often on plane rides that were, well, harrowing. One of them, if it's true, sounds like the pilot asked Larry to grab it's not a wheel, but the wheel. He had stories. He had an exciting and adventurous life. And he had many wonderful things that he had collected on some of these trips that were on display in their home. Did pretty well for a kid who was born to parents who survived the Holocaust. His mother was in Auschwitz, his father in Dachau. For a guy who was born in 1946 in Edding, Germany, in spite of moving when he was either 2 or 3 to Winnipeg, had memories of Germany, and of course, grew up with parents who had narrowly escaped their own deaths. Larry fought through a lot in his life, even from the very beginning. One of the toughest battles, Barb mentioned, she used that word when they talked about having kids. So it's no surprise, at least not to me, that for Larry, his children, Gabriel and Bailey, were everything, were his life. In recent years, they remember being concerned about his ongoing health issues, but also getting calls from him, checking in almost daily. Looking back at the clear picture, the bigger picture, they remember a dad who wanted to make it to everything they did, who would never miss an activity, a sporting event, and would never let anything stop him, even the many things that could have. When mobility issues slowed him down and made painful just to get around, Larry never stopped going to ringette games to see Bailey play. They would always find time, Bailey and Larry, to rewatch their favorite movies or make new memories, like the time they drove together, the two of them, to Fargo to see Shania Twain. And of course, Larry supported Gabriel's passions in life with the same enthusiasm and dedication. His passions into music, into art. If there were lessons, Larry was in the car figuring out how to get everyone to everything on time. When it came to discipline or advice, Gabriel and Bailey talked about their dad often offering tough love, which felt, for them, even looking back on it, a little misguided, but always well-meaning. He wanted his words to be of a benefit to others. Even if it came out clumsy and he wasn't sure how to say it, he always wanted people to benefit, to do better. He wanted to help. In this way, Larry is very generous. In the last 2 years, he got to enjoy being a Zeta to Layla. That, I'm told, reignited something in him. On tough days for Larry, Layla was often the only one who could get him energized. This past February, there was a family trip to Palm Springs, rife with physical challenges, but it will forever be cherished by this family as 3 generations were able to participate in it. And we can't speak of shared memories for Larry and the Winestock family without talking about the cottage at Winnipeg Beach. Something that Larry and Barb acquired when Bailey was just 6 months old, where the kids spent their summers, where there are so many fond and lasting memories. Larry pulling up to the cottage, honking his horn to announce his arrival, the kids riding around town on the handlebars of his scooter, or just sitting around the bonfire listening to and sharing many stories. We mentioned it earlier, but it's worth mentioning again before we pass the mic to Gabriel. Larry did not have an easy life. He had a very difficult life. But he never stopped fighting. He fought throughout his life more than most people ever should have to. And though it got him down, he never stopped. He always persevered, soldiered on, and kept his family as the guiding light that led him towards what mattered most. It's now my honor to call up Gabriel to offer his eulogy for his dad.
We good? Yes. To my niece, Layla, I've been working on eulogies longer than I care to admit. Death is terrifying to me. And it's... my secret fear has always been of being alone. To cope with this, I would write and consider loss and consider what loss would be to me. And it would help. But in Grace Hospital on Tuesday when my father died, the first question asked was, what am I supposed to tell Layla when she asked for Zeta? In that moment, I threw out everything I had ever wanted and planned to say here. I completely changed approach because in that moment I realized that I hadn't lost anything. My experience of time and my experience of life with my father ended on Tuesday at 10:01 p.m. Yeah. But I have lost nothing. But you, Layla, you have lost something. You've lost someone. A grandfather. It's a role we associate with wisdom and sagely advice. The word itself commands respect and evokes thoughts of foundations, strength, and the keepers of knowledge over time. You should have two. You deserve two. You won't have two. We are left now today hoping so much that you might just retain some memory, something, anything, which you can hold on to as a memory of your loving Zeta. Because you truly meant everything to him. One day you'll read this. One day you'll understand. I want you to know who your Zeta was and what he wanted to be for you. Layla, he truly loved you. And to you, I am so sorry for your loss. Your Zeta, our dad, was difficult, complex, and confusing. Though it wasn't always immediately apparent, those who knew our dad knew that to speak to him was to confront a wall of noise. Every word he spoke had to cut through his entire life experience, like radio waves through the air, or boats crossing the ocean. He struggled with letting things go, so he just carried everything with him. But the more he hung on to the bad and the sad things, the bigger they got. Too often his emotions went unexpressed. His trauma and conflicts went unresolved. And even as an adult, he still acutely felt every single childhood pain. He dwelled on these things and more. And Layla, there was a lot. Before he knew it, those radio waves and boats had to traverse some pretty awful storms. And sometimes, his words got lost. Sometimes they were too quiet. And sometimes all you could hear was the thunder, hail, and wind. There was a tempest that raged in our father's mind. And even if you couldn't hear it, for him it was ever present. And it grew. He told me that growing up, he was treated and felt like he was treated by his parents as a memento, a symbol, an embodiment of a particular time. It's cruel and unfair that through absolutely no fault of their own, your great-grandparents were not able to see their son as the embodiment of liberation, perseverance, and a future. Instead, they were only able to see him as the embodiment of Auschwitz, gas chambers, and 17 million lost. It's cruel and unfair that through absolutely no fault of his own, our father resented this treatment and couldn't let it go. And the storm grew. While his mother was alive, I recall overhearing his side of an argument they had over the phone. I don't remember much of it, just him shouting through tears, which didn't happen often, the tears, slamming the receiver down and not coming out of his room for some time after. The words he had shouted were, "All I ever wanted to hear was you say you love me." And the storm grew. These things plagued our father's every moment, and most of his friends and people who knew him had at some point, even several points, unfortunately witnessed his storm manifest into some cruel, mean, and really stupid actions. But that was absolutely not who our father was. That was just your Zeta struggling in his storm. Over the past several years, he found the struggle got harder, and in turn no one felt that worse than your Baba. But he always fought, and we did our best to remember that 9 times out of 10, Layla, he won. Let's acknowledge the 1. Let's remember the 9. Layla, your Zeta would have been your endless source of embarrassment. He was without question one of the most embarrassing people in the world. This I know. It doesn't matter what you think about your mom and dad, you're wrong, kid, let me tell you. Long before Lululemon was printing and powering mantra ideas on the sides of crappy water bottles, your Zeta had, to our dismay, developed his own personal mantra. The worst they can say is no. A statement which, through our father's rigorous ad nauseum testing, has been proven absolutely false. And proven false often. Likewise, the phrase, "would you take a quarter?" has indeed lost us more than it has gained, in dignity and deals. It's even resulted in a handful of bannings. Your Baba and Zeta were told not to be obnoxious at your mother's ringgit games. But your Zeta would go to Rabah's gloves, find the largest, loudest clapping mitts available, big solid leather things probably designed for the delinquent moose wrangling department at the RCMP. He'd go to your mother's games with your Baba, and together they became the most obnoxious, rowdy ringgit hooligans. Bailey would say, "Dad, don't piss off the referees." Dad would say, "What's the worst they're gonna say? Stop." And before you knew it, your Baba and Zeta were being ejected out of rural Manitoban ice rinks, where they would then proceed to pound on the windows from the outside. Layla, your mother was adopted. Her athleticism comes from a species of family tree so rare and exotic that to this family it is alien. Our dad made it to every single one of her sports things that he could. He watched Bailey like a supernatural phenomenon, and that's exactly what she was to him. Case in point. On a family trip to the Bahamas years ago, we all went snorkeling. Sort of. Your Zeta found the goggles quite disorienting as he was unable to wear his glasses with them. The big, bitey mouthpiece didn't help either, as it wasn't attached properly, so swung with every step, whacking him repeatedly in the nose. And the flippers. Big ones, seemingly made out of the same super buoyant material life jackets are. There was your Zeta, goose-stepping towards the ocean. The very first wave took the flippers skyward, Zeta and all. Every consequent wave exhibited to us a new part of our beloved father. It was like watching a slideshow of someone trying to replicate all John Travolta's Saturday Night Fever moves, all at once, in a hamster wheel. No one could help because the laughter across the packed beach was too severe. I'm sure many were at risk of hypoxia. 2 strangers managed to crawl over in hysterics to help him, but our father, your Zeta, was not a petite boy. In short order, they seemed to take the Bee Gees' message to heart. You should be dancing. And then there were 3. All rolling, flipping, grabbing at each other like a Looney Tunes fight cloud. As one got up, another tried to use them as support, and another wave would hit. At one point, when I thought they were nearing success, they were all 3 taken out by a well-timed wave like 3 oddly shaped bowling pins. And there was my father's flipper again, waving at us like the Queen. It was absolute pandemonium in barely ankle-deep water. When our dad finally got up and took the barely half step out of the ocean that 10 minutes ago he had taken into the ocean, he waved to the crowd on the beach and exclaimed, "Thank you, I'll be here all week." My son the doctor, my father the snorkeler. He viewed Bailey's sports prowess with honor, pride, and heaps of envy and awe. He was her biggest fan, and he would have been yours too. Your Zeta spent a few weeks in hospital this spring, and while he was there, he told me he was frightened. Not of death, not of dying, but of losing his autonomy, his independence, and his capabilities. I asked him what about it worried him, and his response was something which might surprise a lot of people. I recorded the conversation, so I can quote directly from that. I am scared to admit to Mum that there are things I can't do. She will feel obligated to do what's in her nature, become a caregiver, and lose track of herself completely. Over the years, I watched her do it for her family. I've watched her do it for her friends. If she sees the necessity, she will shift into that role. And I'm telling you, more than anyone else, she deserves a break. So we fight. I can't clear out the office. I know that. But so long as I put it off, she can sew and paint in her anger. And as long as we keep fighting about these sort of things, I'm just a pain in the ass and not a burden to her. I looked at my dad after a short moment and said, "Dad, that is the most beautiful, misguided, bullshit logic I've ever heard." He tried so hard. He tried so hard to be what the people around him needed. And while he often got it wrong, the words and thoughts he was sending through that storm originated from such a heartfelt and genuine love that it is frankly almost sickening. Your Zeta would have done anything for you. Anything. And always. One day you'll read this. One day you'll understand. I want you to know who your Zeta was and what he wished he could be for you. He truly loved you, Layla. And I am so sorry for your loss, and I truly hope you remember him.
Thank you, Gabriel. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Meromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Uteorim, Zohar Arakia Mazirim and Nishmat Lazer ben Menachem Mendel Barucho Shalach Leolamo Began Eden de Menuchato Hanabal Harachamim Hastireu Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror Achaim Enishmato Adonai hu nachalato ve'yanuach b'shalom amishkavo ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Larry Winestock, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. In a moment we will conclude our service with the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish, and then the shoveling of earth into the grave. The family will lead us, and then everyone who is here is invited to participate in this ritual. As I mentioned before, the highest form of respect in Jewish tradition is to follow someone to the very end. This is why we believe that our loved ones deserve to be buried by our own hands. Kind, knowing, sorrowful hands. Hands that once held their hands. So again, the family will lead us and everyone is invited to participate. It's understandable people may be reluctant because it can be a very painful act. So we remind ourselves that it is a mitzvah. It is a righteous act we do without any hope of any reward, and it is born of love and compassion for someone who meant so much to so many people. There are shovels on both sides of the pile of earth. People can line up from both sides. People have different customs in different cemeteries around the world, different communities. Most people pour 3 shovelfuls of earth. But you'll see some people use the front of the shovel, some people use the back of the shovel. Some people, when they're finished, will return the shovel to the earth. Other people will pass it to the next person. Whatever is the custom with which you're familiar, or the custom that resonates and has meaning for you, is the custom you should embrace, I believe. If the big shovels are too daunting, don't want to handle it, on this side, where I'm kind of pointing, there is a pail with a small shovel in it that you can use to pour 3 shovelfuls of sand and earth as well, so that you can also participate, even if you don't want to use the big shovels. And then, as always, as we get into this time of year, please be mindful of your footing. It hasn't been very wet lately, but it can be muddy, it can be a little bit slick, so just go slowly and be careful. As far as Shiva goes, the family will be sitting Shiva and accepting visitors tomorrow evening, that's Saturday evening between 7 and 9, and Sunday in the afternoon between 2 and 4, and in the evening between 7 and 9 at the Portsmouth. Barb's residence at the Portsmouth. So again, that's tomorrow between 7 and 9, Sunday 2 and 4, 7 and 9 at the Portsmouth. I'll offer one more prayer and then we'll turn to the Kaddish. And again, thank you to everyone for being here and for the honor of being a part of our tribute to and remembering Larry. Eternal God, Master of Mercy, give us the gift of remembering. May our memories of our loved one be tender and true, undiminished by time. Let us recall him and love him as he was. Shelter us with the gift of tears. Let us express our senses of loss, sorrow, pain, as well as love, and even words unspoken. Bless us with the gift of prayer, that we may face you with an open heart, trusting faith, unembarrassed and unashamed. Strengthen us with the gift of hope, that we may always believe in the beauty of life, the power of goodness, and the right to joy. May we surrender our being and the soul of our loved one to your all-knowing compassion. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God, you have given, God, you have taken away. Blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Larry Winestock be for a blessing, as we mark that his essence will never leave our hearts and our souls. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv vimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabah Mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yiparach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar, v'tromam, v'itnaseh, v'itadar, v'itale, v'talal, shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma, v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity, as again we say amen. And to everyone, but to the family in particular, we offer these words. Hamakom yinachem elchem betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled among all those who are or who have ever been in mourning in our community. I invite the family to come forward. I thank everyone again for being here and for tuning in. Thank you.